Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. And spring football has finally arrived, which means no more hypothetical conversations for a while. We can take the tangible things we saw in reality and turn those into new hypotheticals. Because what are we without our hypotheticals? What are we, Stefan? What are we without our hypotheticals? How could we survive in this sport without hypotheticals?
I did think that I found it funny that one of the first major things to come out of spring practice does spring off a hypothetical that we had in our last position group breakdown. So that's always good.
Yeah, so I mean, we can start there. We can start with the fact that Leroy Roker spoke before the team and before practice, which is kind of notable because the last time we saw an Ohio State football practice, there was also a safety speaking before practice. That safety is going to be a top 10 draft pick. Do we think Leroy Roker is going to be a top 10 draft pick? Probably not. Probably not, right? Even Dave was getting asked about, hey, it's kind of crazy that Caleb Downs is going to be a first-round pick, right? It's kind of crazy, huh? What do we think about the safety battle? Do we think it's a real battle between Terry Moore and – you know what? Let's turn it into this because this is what spring is all about. Something, nothing, or everything. That Leroy Roker was alongside Jalen McClain and Earl Little and Devin Sanchez and Jermaine Matthews in a world where we think that those other four are pretty much locked into being starters for Ohio State in 2026. Is that something, nothing, or everything?
I think it's something. I think it's certainly something because there are spots on this roster where, sure, you could say, spring practice number one, the guys who are coming back, the guys who have been around, maybe they kind of lead the way because they understand how things work around here. But with the ones you had Earl Little, working at nickel still. And at safety, it was Leroy Roker, not Terry Moore. And I think that's notable. So I think it's certainly something. And I think Leroy could have been out there because he's the one who's kind of been there, done that. But also Leroy could also be out there because he's taken the next step. And in a safety room where Fahim Delane thought it was best for him to leave, Leroy Roker thought it was best for him to stay, even though there was an all ACC guy coming in. And I think, even part of that too, it's not like Leroy is a second-year guy who's saying, okay, I'll just wait my turn. Year 3 is when my opportunity will come. Like, it is year 3 for him. And he's still willing to kind of stick it out, stay here, and feel like he could have a big enough role, right? So I think it's something because everything this offseason is kind of built toward like, hey, every time we talk about the safety room, we kind of forget about Leroy Roker, and he's still here. And he's the guy who late in the 2025 season was getting reps over Fahim Delane in certain situations. He's the guy now who is getting reps over Terry Moore early in the spring. Could we get to late spring and Terry Moore is working with the ones? Sure. Could we get to fall camp and week 1 and Terry Moore's a starter? Sure. But I think this does show you that the signs of late in the 2025 season have translated now into the spring where Leroy Roker is doing the necessary things to be trusted with first team reps by this coaching staff. And when you have a guy in Terry Moore who we know is an all ACC caliber player, but we also know hasn't played since 2024 and is coming off an ACL injury, which is not an easy thing, even in modern technology. It's not always the easiest thing to recover from an injury like that. It's notable. I think it's something. So the on the field stuff is obviously part of it. And then like you mentioned, it's the first day of spring. Ohio State has X amount of returning starters. Who is Ryan Day going to have speak to the team on the first day of spring with all these new faces, right? There's 50 new guys who are all being introduced to Ohio State football for the first time. And we got to put someone in front of them before that very first practice to kind of set the tone. It's going to be Kenyatta Jackson or Brandon Ennis or Jeremiah Smith or Jalen McClain, right? It was Leroy Roker. All of us were standing there kind of being like, who's that? Who's that? Like trying to see the jersey number. We're like, oh, number 10 on defense. That's Leroy Roker. So it's definitely something. I'm not going to say it's everything, right? Because it's early in the spring, right? Not much is everything right now, but it's far from nothing. At a position where we kind of threw out the hypothetical of you bring in all these transfers, they're not all going to start for you, even the ones you project to start. Certain things happen, right? Like we thought last year Bo Atkinson would maybe have a bigger role than he was going to have. We thought Ethan Onwenu was going to be a starter, right? Like you get these guys, they can beat, but Ohio State also recruits and develops really well. And I think I like the Leroy Roker arc too, because it's like he was a 3-star in the composite rankings, right? This isn't your typical Ohio State like come in, but like hey, here's a 5-star, 4-star who in year 3 is obviously going to pop. Like, this is kind of an archaic, in college football terms, like development of a diamond in the rough deal, right? A 3-star prospect you develop, like a 3-star prospect goes to a school and develops and stays and doesn't leave, and in year 3 he's competing for a starting job. It feels good, doesn't it? It feels good to say it. It feels good to see it.
That's like you're talking about dinosaur times there. Develop here. Who? What?
Still on the wall.
There, and then you come here. It is still on the walls. I do think that it is showing that it's the first day of spring practice, and he chose Leroy Roker to talk in a world where he has 2 returning captains on the offensive side. I do think that is a notable thing because they're also looking for a bunch of new leaders all over the place. It can't just be Brandon Ennis and Austin Saravell doing all the leading. You need a lot of leaders, and they're probably trying to develop their leadership committee right now. And so you're putting guys in positions where they're a little bit more uncomfortable. How often has Leroy Roker been the guy who has the entire roster, entire program's attention, right? So you're just putting guys in positions to get them uncomfortable to see how they thrive in those spots. Gillis, something, nothing, or everything. Leroy Roker.
Something, but it sounds like if nothing is 0, something is 50, everything's 100. Stefan's more on the north side of 50 with
like
that.
75. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something, but I'm more like 20. Ooh. Like I don't care. Like, I'm sorry. Like, here's what I would say. Ohio State, I talked about this in our video, and I'm going to use the defensive line as an example here. Ohio State had a bunch of returning offensive linemen, right? They went in the portal, they got one guy who we have to ask about this. I didn't see him on the spring practice roster, so he might just be a summer guy.
He's not getting it. If you're going to ask about for Sean Washington, he is still at Dartmouth.
That's what he
is not going to get here until the summer. Because remember, they still go to school.
At the Ivy Leagues, they do.
You just call it Dartmouth?
No, I said Dartmouth.
That's not what you said.
I said Dartmouth.
On the record. That's not what you said.
I can edit it out and say that I said Dartmouth. So it's.
Well, we'll watch the tape.
No, I think the reason I said Dartmouth is because we were joking about it, calling it Dartmouth, and now it got stuck in my head.
But like,
Dartmouth.
The offensive line is veteran. They're old. They're experienced. The defensive line is old. They're veteran. They're experienced. But the defensive line just has a bunch of new guys, and the offensive line doesn't. Like, the offensive line today was Saraveld, Montgomery, Hinsman, Gabe Van Sickle, the only quote-unquote drama maybe on the offensive line, right tackle, Phillip Daniels. Okay, they kept a lot of the dudes there. Defensive line was, and we'll get to this later, the defensive line was all returners. For as much as they brought in on the defensive line, Will Smith and Edric Houston, and then Bo Atkinson and Kenyatta Jackson. So I understand that idea of Leroy Roker broke the team down and Leroy Roker is talking to the team. Like, I get it, and I think that it's something. But Ohio State also went and got a second-team All-ACC safety, pulled him back from committing to the NFL draft. And this is a dude who, when he showed up at Duke, was a running back. And then played safety in 23, played safety in 24, and then in 25 he blew an ACL. Or he blew an ACL technically at the end of the 24 season, so he missed 25. So, like, this is a dude who wants to play safety and needs to play safety, and I think Ohio State's aware of that. So I'm not going to read a ton into that because I don't think Ohio State's... Like, Christian Allegro was out there with the first team, but I don't think we're going to see a ton of portal guys immediately walking their way onto the starting job. And I think Leroy Roker doing that is big because Fahim Delane, hey, he was here and everybody thought he was going to be the guy, and Leroy Roker was ahead of him. They were playing him more in the Cotton Bowl. I get it, but it's early, and there's a transfer portal player behind him who has played over 1,000 career snaps, was a decorated All-ACC player. Let's wait. I'm not really swayed by the Leroy Roker of today. I think it's interesting, but it's not. I'm not going head over heels with it. And I'm not saying Stefan is either, but
yes, he is. That's what he's saying, Stefan. To be fair, Ethan Inyawa had played 1,000+ snaps when he got here, and the guy who was coming back and going into his third year is the guy who ended up starting at left tackle for Ohio State. I think it's everything. But I'm going to tell you why I think it's everything. Because it's not everything because I think that he's going to beat out Terry Moore to be the starting safety here. It's everything because of what we saw from Ohio State last year. I'm going to ask this question. It's 3rd and 7, clear passing situation against Texas. What's the back 7 look like?
Probably have, let's say it's Peyton Pierce and whoever within, Riley Pettijohn and Christian Allegro's there.
Okay.
Jalen McClain, Earl Little, Devin Sanchez, Jermaine Matthews. And I mean, everything we saw on Tuesday suggests that they would trust Leroy Roker more than Cam Calhoun or Dominic Kelly.
That's why it's everything for me. I think Terry Moore is going to be in the starting safety here. But that third down package we saw last year, I don't think that's Matt Patricia's not throwing that out the playbook for 2026 if he feels like he can go to it. And last year, the option was to take a corner and move him in the nickel and put Devin Sanchez outside. And sure, could he do that this year if Dominic Kelly or Cam Calhoun turns into something? Possibly. But does he have to do that? What if he just keeps Jermaine and Devin outside and he brings Earl Little down and he brings Jalen McClain down to play the Caleb Downs role in that pack? Because that was the thing. Like, Caleb Downs wasn't just like a high safety in that. Caleb Downs was wherever. And then you got Terry Moore and you got Leroy Roker back there. So it's everything for me because of the way Ryan Day talked about the defensive backs after practice, where he said it's as deep as we've had. He said that about a couple of positions. He said that about a wide receiver. He said that about the defensive backs. He said that about the offensive line, about we've never really had this type of depth. And Leroy Roker being with the ones, Gillis is correct. There is an element here of anywhere that there was an option to put a guy who has been in the system here before first, that's what they went with. And they couldn't do that at linebacker because Riley Pettijohn is not practicing this spring at full go. So there was whenever you saw any level of a team period, Riley Pettijohn wasn't out there. So if there were two linebackers out there, it was going to be Peyton Pearson and Christian Allegro. Would that have been true if Riley Pettijohn was practicing? No, probably Riley Pettijohn would have been out there first, right? You probably would have been the same thing at wide receiver, but there's only two returning wide receivers, and Jeremiah Smith and Brandon Ennis. And Desi Jones is back, but Desi Jones and Phillip Bell are not. They both for slot receivers. So of course Devin McEwen's out there with Jeremiah Smith and Brandon Ennis with the ones. The offensive line, it was the exact same offensive line starters who started the Cotton Bowl. Do we all think that the guys who took the field as the starting offensive line in the Cotton Bowl are going to be the same people who take the field as the starting offensive line on September 5th? Probably not, right? But could be. Sure, it's an option, which is something I noticed about this team from the get-go is it's an option that you could do that. I know Ryan Day said that Austin Saravelt is practicing a tackle, but he also, Ryan Day doesn't say anything on accident. He also said he could do guard stuff. The only guy where it was just tackle, and there was not a single other position mentioned, was Phillip Daniels. And I thought that was interesting because I think we've all been like, why can't Phillip Daniels play guard? Exactly. But I don't know. It sounds, if they're going to move one of their starting tackles from last year, it sounds like it's going to be Saravelt. And that's fine if it means you're getting Ian Moore on the field. So that's whatever. But yes, guys returning were in front of guys who just got here because it's the first day. Sure. And everybody's trying to figure out what they're doing if you've never done this before. There's 51 dudes who have never done this at Ohio State before. And there's 28 of those 51 who have never done it anywhere before because they're true freshmen. But I do think it's everything that Ryan Day is talking about his defensive back depth. Because now you start to get the ball rolling in your head of okay, how many different ways can they deploy this thing? So I don't look at my everything isn't because I think Leroy Roker is going to beat out Terry Moore, but my everything is, could Leroy Roker and Terry Moore be on the field at the same time? And Jalen McClain, and Earl Little, and Devin Sanchez, and Jermaine Matthews? Who knows? Maybe they might rotate guys at different spots. Who knows? But it was interesting to see that, and it was interesting to hear how Ryan Day talked about that.
The first time we talked to Matt Patricia this spring, which for context is at a date to be determined. Ohio State has spring break next week, so we'll figure that out when we're going to get to talk to. I mean, Arthur Smith is going to be interesting too, but I think Patricia, honestly, there's so much new with this defense, and the back end is obviously part of that. Ryan mentioned today, when you lose Davison, and when you lose Caleb Downs, and when you lose Lorenzo Styles, that definitely changes the way that you do things and changes the way that you have to operate. And I'm thinking about kind of what we saw today because your eyes are kind of darting around and it's you wonder how much of it is real and you wonder how much of it is day one of spring ball and it's March 10th and we haven't even gotten to April yet and blah, blah, blah. At this time 2 years ago, we were looking at each other going, Devin Brown might be better than Will Howard. Or at least he looks the same. Think about some of the previous camp battles that we've had conversations about. I'm curious if this is mad scientist Matt Patricia. He has 18 different packages for 18 different 3rd and 7. If 3rd and 7 on the left hash is different from 3rd and 7 on the right hash, and blah blah blah. And he can, or if is he going to settle into more of a I guess solidified role with this defense? Because Steven, you were mentioning it, like, yeah, like Leroy Roker, Terry Moore, and Jalen McClain could absolutely play on the same field. But then you've also got Dominic Kelly and Cam Calhoun at corner, right? And you wonder how they factor into that mix. Ryan mentioned the depth, and I don't think we've seen enough or at all of like the freshmen that are so highly touted, or, hey, Miles Lockhart's still here. Like the depth is there, but I wonder if it's just good depth or if it's let's use it all. I don't know where that's going to fall, and I don't even think we're going to have an answer tomorrow as you guys listen to this, or even maybe through the spring.
Guys, what's something else you noticed from first day?
Yeah, I mean, I watched the offensive line and defensive line, as I'm one to do. But I'll start with the defensive line because, like I said, the offensive line was just kind of what it was. I can go through. I have my notes out. I can go through and kind of, maybe who was working with who.
Let me just say real quick, we're talking about the offensive line. One of the updates we got from Ryan Day is that Josh Padilla is limited. When, it was Sierreveld, Montgomery, Hinsman, Van Sickle, Daniels. That doesn't necessarily mean that Van Sickle's the first team right guard. It's just that Josh Padilla was not really participating much today. So he is part of that too. He did mention for Hinsman and Padilla that they can play center guard, and I thought it was interesting that he kind of dropped both of those. I wonder if there is an opportunity where Padilla is the center and Hinsman is the right guard instead of vice versa. But that's the context of why Gabe Van Sickle was the starting right guard. He is obviously competing for that spot, but the competition was not fully there today.
To that point, because before you get to that, Gillis, because you're going to talk defensive line, I get it. It's spring, and they're going to try everything possible and move guys around. Do you think Carson Hinsman isn't going to be their starting center in 2026?
I think that's on the table.
What percentage do you think is on the table?
35.
Is that higher?
They've been talking about Padilla as the center of the future for a couple of years now, and Hinsman, the opportunities he got at guard in 2024, he was pretty good. I don't think Hinsman has to play center just because he's played center.
No, I'm with you. I'm just poking my. You kind of reacted there, Gillis. Did you think that was high or low?
I thought it was kind of high. I'm at 10%. I think Hinsman's pretty. I feel pretty good that Hinsman's going to be putting the football between his legs on the first snap of Ohio State season.
On the first snap of Ohio State season?
On offense.
I was going to say, because I don't know. We'll throw on defense. But also there's a thing called a kickoff.
I'm just going to transfer to Ball State.
I'm with you. I'm not ruling it out. But it's also Josh Padilla's in year, 4 now?
Year 4.
I do think it reaches a point where it's it just hasn't happened. And there have been opportunities, right? I don't know, when he was in his second year here, Ohio State went and got a different center to play here. And then when that center went down with an injury and they started messing around with the offensive line to try to figure things out, I know that there were 2 other offensive linemen in his class who were playing in that national championship run, and he was not. And then when you had an opportunity, and Carson Hinsman was playing guard at the time, they could have kept him at guard and played Josh Padilla. And then, this past year, Carson never got hurt.
The center, yeah.
Right, but there was I don't know, I don't know if Tegra played so well last year. Tegra is such an interesting thing because it's Tegra wasn't good last year, but every single week they would end the week going, Tegra Chabola is our best option at right guard. And at no point and the thing is they changed offensive line coaches. So a brand new offensive line coach came in here, looked at everything with a different set of eyes, and still decided Carson Hinsman's best spot is at center and not Josh Padilla, and Tegra Chabola should be on the field. So you're right. From anything is possible standpoint, yeah, I've lived in a world here once where we thought we knew what the offensive line was in 2021, and then 2 weeks in this fall camp, DeJuan Jones is your starting right tackle. So I'm not going to rule it out, but it's just, why would that happen now in year 4 when it hasn't happened at any other point in Josh Padilla's career? Is the only reason I'm pushing back on even my idea of could it happen?
Well, because I think what's interesting though is last year as the season progressed, Ryan Day talked about feeling like Josh Padilla was practicing well, and at that point in the year, getting him in at center didn't really make a lot of sense unless it was garbage time, but they didn't want to wait until garbage time to play him. So
Sure.
if at some point in the season last year they're like he's ready to go, but it's kind of too late to put him at center now because the season's already started, is that something you could reevaluate in the offseason? I think is very much on the table. Donovan Jackson went year 4 and had only played 8 snaps at tackle.
Yeah, but that was like we had no other choice but to put Donovan Jackson at left
They
tackle.
tried somebody else at tackle before they tried Donnie. And
They literally tried
it turned
another
into
left
injury,
tackle.
add injury to insult.
And it
because
worked.
Mahalski was getting benched whether or not he got hurt.
But Gillis is correct in that wasn't their first choice when Josh Simmons went down to move even after 2 weeks. Because in the moment, obviously, you just have to put Zin Mahalski in there because you're not going to reshuffle your entire offensive line at that point. So I get that. They came back after 2 weeks and decided Zin Mahalski was still the answer. And then he didn't play well. It's like, we can't throw him back out there after that. And so now they had a week to get Donovan Jackson ready. I'm not ruling it out either. I'm also just like, we're 4 years into this, and at no point has it even felt like Josh Padilla would be a better option at center than Carson Hinsman.
And
Well,
go ahead, Steve. I was going to say we were like, you better be damn sure if you're going to do that Josh Padilla is all Big Ten level center, because I think that's probably where we're talking with Hinsman. And it's like, hey, if you're going to go Padilla as your center, he better be good, and also you better be sure that Hinsman, who I know he's played guard, but he hadn't played right guard. He played left guard when he came in. Like, you're asking him to go play a new position, and you had better not have a problem there. You'd better get really good play out of center because Padilla was there. And I think we all can agree Hinsman's probably going to be at the bare minimum pretty decent this year. Whether you want to say he's going to be pretty decent and he's a 5th round pick, or whether you want to say he's the 40th overall pick and he's going to win the Remington, I don't know.
I was going to say he was going to win I don't know about the 4th round pick part, but I was going to say he was going to win the Remington award.
Right, sure. Exactly. Logan Jones, the kid who just won the Remington at Iowa, I think they're talking about him as like a 3rd round pick. So it's
but he's better than Carson.
You can talk about Hinsman being to whatever degree of good, but I think it's pretty clear that if you're going to do it, Philip Daniels has got to prove that he's that dude. Because today, so I have these notes just for context. There were 3 centers when they peeled off and they were taking snaps.
Yep.
It was Carson Hinsman, it was Jake Cook, and it was the true freshman Mason Wilhelm. When they were doing bag drills, which is basically a 2-on-1, a combo block, work up to the next level, they had Philip Daniels working with Carson Hinsman, which I took note of. Philip Daniels and Carson Hinsman don't combo block a lot, but Hinsman was snapping. They did have Josh Padilla working with Gabe Van Sickle. Josh Padilla was snapping. Austin Searveld and Luke Montgomery worked together. Neither one of them had a football in their hands. And then they had Jake Cook and Maxwell Riley next to each other. And Jake Cook was snapping a football. They also had Carter Lowe, and I need to pull out my roster here because there's so many friggin' new players. Sam Greer. So they had Carter Lowe.
Pull out your roster for Sam Greer. Sam Greer is a large human being, by the way.
Yeah, but when you have 77 written on a notepad, it doesn't go as hard as looking at... you see Sam Greer walk out on the field and you're like, oh, that's Sam Greer 77. When you're looking at it on a journalism notebook and it just says 77-74, it takes a second to register.
I saw Sam Greer and said, that guy's going to be an All-American. He is.
And then Ian Moore was working with
significantly larger. Yeah, I think the most notable thing from the offensive line from that standpoint is what you talked about earlier when they had them split up into 3 different groups, and it was very obvious, like, this is the tackle group, this is the center group, and this was the guard group, and like who is in which of those groupings. Because they're mixing and matching when they're doing a lot of these other things purposely because they're trying to figure out what the best combination is. But I think when they split them into 3 different groups, and I think I even said that to Landis, like I like that they're doing that because it like helps us. And they're not doing it to help us, but it's just you got to categorize them the way that we categorize them. And like you're right, I saw there were 3 centers. Padilla was with the guards at that point when they were doing that, even if he wasn't doing much. And then that's when I realized how large Sam Greer was. Because it was like, Lord,
7'3" is what he was listed at.
I know. And he looks every bit of it. He's towering over Austin Searveld, who is not a small person by any means whatsoever. But I'm with you, though, Stefan. These are all interesting conversations. They're trying to figure out the best combination. And if somehow Josh Padilla ends up being the starting center, am I going to be flabbergasted by it? Of course not. I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around like what would have to happen for that to finally click in year 4, given that Carson Hinsman is back on this roster. And it's like, I don't know. Carson Hinsman's been your center for 3 of the last 4 years.
I mean, for me, the thing that, again, I said 35%, but like the thing that would have to click is like, I don't know, right guard sucked last year. So you're like, Gillis, you're talking about like, could Padilla be as good as Hinsman was? I don't know. Well, can Hinsman be way better than Padilla, Van Sickle, and Tech?
It's
like,
a
we'll figure it
combo.
out at center.
Sure, but
It's a combo of
you don't want to create
Hinsman
another
and-
problem by trying to fix one.
True.
That's what.
I mean, you have to be pretty. You have to be pretty confident.
Yeah,
I think I would do it, but
you do it. You'd put Padilla at center.
I would do it.
Okay, I want you to tell.
You heard it here. March 10th, Ohio State plays a real game in just under 6 months.
Yeah.
Let's figure out the offensive line for week 1.
I've got
listen,
to figure it out.
I mean, we saw an hour of practice. What more do you want?
I will
from
say
us?
the Phillip Daniels thing was actually kind of surprising. Because when I did some of the depth charts, and then earlier this week I wrote a story about New offensive line and all the different combinations you had. Like, one of the things I really liked was the idea of Ian Moore being your starting left tackle, Searveld moving to right tackle, and Daniels moving inside, or even vice versa, where it's Searveld at left tackle, Ian Moore at right tackle. Like, I'm really high on Ian Moore this year, so to hear like Phillip Daniels is working, I wonder if that opens the door to your tackles being Moore and Daniels with Searveld inside, or if that is just saying Searveld is going to be our left tackle, Daniels and Moore figuring out a right tackle, and they're not going to worry about guard at all.
Can we?
Keeping in mind the veteran stuff, when they split up with tackles, it was Searveld and Daniels, and then Ian Moore and Carter Lowe.
Yes.
Which I thought was interesting.
Is it just fair that whenever we talk to Tyler Bowen and go, hey, why can this guy be a good guard and why can this guy be a good tackle? Just to see what his answers are.
Fire away.
I'm just because it's like because all this cross training is great, but do you see something that can lead to you putting them in the game at that spot on Saturday? Because that's the thing. Last year, when it was like very abundantly clear that, hey, man, Austin Searveld's probably going to play a tackle spot, it was like, hey, what makes Austin Searveld a good tackle? Okay, what makes good tackle? Okay, what makes him a good guard? What makes Phillip Daniels a good tackle? What makes him a good guard? What makes Ian Moore a good left tackle versus a right tackle? What makes Carson Hinsman a good center versus a good guard? Right now, the inside is a little bit more interchangeable easily because they're not on an island. So, like, the whole right and left side for guard doesn't really matter as much to me as it does for tackle because those can be very different job descriptions, especially depending on who you're playing, right? But maybe if we asked it that way, we'd get some answers where the descriptions might help us understand why they're trying this guy here, but also do we think that they actually are walking away thinking this is feasible? Because I think a lot of times we'll ask it in a way and the answer just ends up being, yeah, we're trying guys all over the place. Okay, but why? Well, because we want guys to have experience. Okay, fine. But why is this guy doing these two specific things versus this guy's doing these two specific things? Because sure, okay, like Ian Moore got reps at X, Y, and Z in spring practice. That's great. But you know what ended up mattering? Whatever reps he was getting out as the left tackle, because that's what he was playing against Miami in the second half when Austin Searveld got hurt. You want to know why it mattered that Austin Searveld was getting reps on both sides of the line of scrimmage in 2024 in practice? Because that's what he ended up doing in the game when they won a national title. So I'm asking it facetiously right now, but in all seriousness, I'm almost wondering if that's the best way to approach this. Is like, why those two spots for that guy versus this guy? Versus why is Ethan Obanyawa the only guy who was only repping at left tackle while everybody else was moving around last year? Because in hindsight, probably Ethan Obanyawa should have been getting some reps on the interior to see if he could do that, right? Versus you tried to do it in fall camp, and then you rotated him with Tegra Shabola against Texas, and by halfway through the season, you knew he couldn't play for you. So that's why I think it's an intriguing ask. Is like you want the position coach to essentially break down their skill sets, because that's what they're trying to do right now in practice is break down people's skill sets and see who meshes with who and who ends up being the best five in the room. And then 6, 7, and 8, as Ryan Day said, need to be versatile and be able to play a lot of different positions and essentially be swing guys. So that's a longer offensive line conversation than maybe I was anticipating having today.
I don't think we made the point yet.
We haven't.
No, I haven't gotten to my point yet on the defensive line. We'll get there.
Okay, if we're going to do defensive line, hold off because we'll do that after the break.
Yeah, no, I just want to add something about the O-line real quick. Like, whenever we talk to Tyler Bowen, whenever that is, maybe this is a really stupid question, but I want to ask him the value and the balance of cross-training versus just saying, you play here. Like, Like, what is the balance of saying, well, let's go 2 practices with Austin Searle at right guard, because why not? Maybe one day we're in a position where we need him to play right guard. How do you balance that out with the need for just saying he's going to be our left tackle? Let's play him with Luke Montgomery every snap, because Luke Montgomery is going to be our left guard. Like, how do you balance the need between Phillip Daniels is going to be our right guard right tackle? So we're not really going to kick him into right guard right now. And if that's a bridge we have to cross down the line, we'll come to it, and we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. But like, I'm curious about that, because it is an interesting look, I think, when you talk about this offensive line, because there's 80 different permutations. Stefan, you wrote a story earlier in the week about basically detailing all of them. And I'm pretty sure, I don't mean this disparagingly, you probably left one of them out or 2 of them out, even if they're unrealistic, just because, like, that's how many guys can play that many different spots. But, like, could Carson Hinsman play left guard, center, or right guard? Sure. But what's the value of spending X amount of time and X amount of reps playing left guard, playing right guard, playing center? I don't know the answer to that question. So I'm curious what Tyler has to say about that, because there are certain guys where I think you can lock it in, and I think you would prefer to lock it in. And if you can just say, we're not going to screw around with Searle, he's our left tackle. Okay. Well, then you say, okay, we're not going to screw around with Montgomery, he's our left guard. Okay. And then maybe on the second team, you can start to move some guys around. You're probably going to have injuries in the offensive line at some point. Somebody's going to get banged up. Somebody's going to miss a game or a play or series or whatever. Okay, then you can move stuff around. But I don't know how many reps Donovan Jackson played at left tackle in spring ball or in fall practice, fall camp, going into 2024. And I know he was a freak, but he seemed to do okay having not really done it. So that's why I want to ask.
Okay. So that's line of one. We saw 1 hour of practice, and we just spent 40 minutes breaking down all these different things. Okay, let's take a break, and then we'll come back and talk more about defensive line and create more hypotheticals after we saw reality for 1 hour, by the way, on Buckeye Talk.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Your planet is now marked for death.
Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four: First Steps is now streaming on Disney+.
We will protect you.
As a family.
Light him up, Johnny!
Marvel's first family is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
That is fantastic.
And critics say it's one of the best superhero movies of all time.
Oh!
Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four: First Steps, now streaming on Disney+. Rated PG-13.
What time is it, Ben? It's clobber time!
It was the fall of 2016, and girls were disappearing from Newark, New Jersey, one after another.
But there was no press conference, no scary headlines. No one suspected the truth.
He looked nice. Like, if you look at him, you don't look at him and think he's a serial killer.
This is Someone's Hunting Us, a podcast from NJ.com and the Star Ledger. It's the story of a serial killer you've never heard of, and the women who took him down.
Including the one woman who escaped.
They didn't even believe her. I feel like they let him get away.
But these women saw what he really was.
I didn't know what I was doing, but I felt as though I had to do something.
Imagine your sister or your best friend just disappeared, and the police say they can't locate her. What wouldn't you do to try to find her?
Would you catfish a serial killer? Listen to Someone's Hunting Us wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen, me, Stefan, Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis. We saw 1 hour of practice. Listen, man, this is good. This is good. It just means the juices are flowing. Right?
Because we're practice, not just... there's also like 20 minutes of Ryan Day talking.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. It's 20 minutes. Okay, so fine. An hour of 20 minutes worth of material. And we are going. I'm not saying this like it's a bad thing. I think this is great that we're ready to jump into this, because now we have something to base it off of versus us just like, thinking, what if? No, we saw things. And so now we're trying to react to those things. And I think it's good. You watch the trenches, because of course you did. What'd you think of the defensive line?
My thoughts on the defensive line are we don't know what the hell we're talking about, which is why it has to be hypothetical. So the way that they started this conversation, or the way that they started today, was Bo Atkinson and Kenyatta Jackson were your starting defensive ends, and Will Smith Jr. and Edric Houston were your starting defensive tackles. Those were all returners. This is why I said what I said about Terry Moore at the top. Those were all returners. Those were all guys that have been here before. Those are all guys that have played here before. Multiple years, in fact. Right? Bo Atkinson, this is his second year with the program. What do you have, 7.5 sacks when he was at UNC? He's got a year of eligibility left. Kenyatta Jackson's a fifth-year guy. Will Smith Jr., I think he's a fourth-year guy. And then Edric Houston's a third-year guy. So veteran. All right, cool. But they also went and got 2 fourth-year guys from Bama and James Smith and Quay Russaw. And then they got a fifth-year defensive tackle in John Walker from UCF. And I think when we did our defensive line previews, I think some of us had like 2 transfers that were starting. Like, would not shock me if we get to the end of March, early April, spring game, fall camp, and we're just not right now, if that makes sense.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
I look at this defensive line and I saw, there's going to be some battles here. He didn't really factor in much today, but you want to talk about looking the part? Kari Wilder looks the part, brother. Holy smokes. Does that dude look like a future all Big Ten pass rusher? He was obviously not kind of factoring into the 2 deep today. I thought Drake Quinn, he had some nice get up and go as well. But Quay Russaw, I said Ray Cusaw. Quay was, I thought, their easily most explosive defensive lineman, just kind of going through drills, getting off the ball. I thought he looked quick. I think when Larry or Patricia talks about him, you're going to hear fast, quick, twitchy, explosive, bouncy. You're going to hear all those words used to describe him. James Smith and John Walker, I think, is going to be a let's wait and see until we get the pads on. Pads start popping. We see if one of those guys can kind of handle a nose roll. But there's going to be a lot of permutations and a lot of moving parts. You thought it was a lot on the offensive line. There's a lot going on the defensive line. And I just think through 1 hour of spring practice, it's impossible to tell, because I think there are dudes who did not start with the first team today who will be playing more than the dudes who did come the season.
I like that. The defensive line is just intriguing because you have so many different styles of athleticism, sizes in terms of just build for guys. Like it's all very intriguing because it's so different. I like what I saw from Quay Russaw today, because I know I've been pretty high on Zion Grady this offseason and projecting him to be the starter, opposite of Kenyatta Jackson. But Quay looked pretty good there. His athleticism is definitely something that's going to be an X factor for Ohio State this year, and something that could blow up a third and medium, third and long pretty easily. He's definitely smaller than the other guys in the position room, but the athleticism definitely pops. You mentioned Wilder there. I kind of thought in its totality, and I know some other guys on the beat had mentioned this too, but the freshman physically looked better than the transfers. Looked the part, right? Yes. Like Jameer, Perez kind of looked the part. And obviously there's more to becoming a good college football player than, physically looking the part. I'm not saying Perez is going to start over, a James Smith or an Edric Houston or anything like that, right? But these guys look pretty good. And then you add in the experience that you get from the transfers. I think, take it with a grain of salt, an hour of spring practice. I feel okay about the defensive line room, maybe more so than I did when we did the defensive line preview. I had them 4th, among my defensive positions in terms of my rankings for expectations for them this year, right? And I feel a bit more, comfortable seeing them. So, yeah, the defensive line is it's an interesting group to me. We saw that, like you mentioned at the start, Steven, the 4 guys who were kind of quote-unquote first team were also, the returners, right? I don't think any of us are projecting Bo Atkinson to be the starter at defensive end for Ohio State. And Will Smith, I think, is interesting because he was pretty good last year. I wonder if he's maybe even in that Leroy Roker boat where it's they went out and got transfers, but what if this guy just pops and he's the starter as a returning guy? But I probably wouldn't say yet that we're projecting him to be a starter. But when you bring in that the retention that you do have and the experience of those returning guys with the experience that you got from the portal, and that's all mixed in with different body types and different athleticisms, it's a really interesting group. I wonder if we leave the spring and that's just the toughest position group to project the starters at, right? Because I think when we get to the end of spring, safety, we might have a good idea, even if there is a little bit of a battle between Leroy and Terry Moore. Corner, I think we've already got a good idea, right? Offensive line Sure, maybe we're still trying to figure out, the right side a little bit. We're going to have a decent idea, though. We know who at least 3 of the 5 starters are, and I think after day 1, we're still pretty confident that Phillip Daniels will be a starter for this team. So it's like, you go up and down this roster, I feel good about this defensive line. I wonder if after the spring game, all come in blind saying, okay, Steven, who are your 4 starters on the defensive line? Andrew, who's yours? Stefan, who's yours? I would be pretty surprised if all 4 of us had the same combination of 4 guys. Or all 3 of us had the same combination of 4 guys.
If I said to you guys right now, you have to make a bet. You have Buckeye Talk tokens. And I give you the leading sack getter is, and I say Kenyatta Jackson or the field. Who do you take?
Devin Sanchez.
Oh, right.
I'm taking the field. Because I think linebacker is interesting in this too, right?
Sure.
A guy like Allegro, a guy like Pettijohn. I would take the field. But even if you said just defensive line,
just defensive line? Okay. Just defensive line, then?
I mean, it could just be like, it could be Kenyatta Jackson, newcomer, or the field. Somebody who was a depth player, because it could be Allegro, it could be Quay Russaw, it could be Kari Wilder, I don't know. It could be, I think it could be a myriad of different guys.
So I don't have to pick a defensive lineman? I can pick whoever I want?
I said the field.
Okay. Jalen McClain. I don't know, man. We saw an hour. I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to not jump through a bunch of hoops. I thought guys looked good. I was saying it to a couple of people. I thought the defensive tackle freshman actually looked more impressive just from an eye test standpoint than the transfer they brought in. And I think that's a good thing. So that means their evaluation, at least from a physical standpoint, was pretty good with the freshmen. And it doesn't mean that their transfer portal class is going to be a miss. It's just like, man, I wasn't expecting the freshmen to look like that at defensive tackle the way they look like that. So that it maybe caught me off guard in a way that, I thought the transfer defensive tackles, John Walker and James Smith, looked like what I thought they would look like, even though James Smith is wearing number 3, which is weird. It's been a while. I think the last time a defensive tackle here was wearing a single-digit number was Teron Vincent, and it looked just as weird as James Smith wearing number 3 as a defensive tackle.
4 defensive linemen wearing single digits.
Yeah, but I don't mind that with edges. You're on the edge. But when you're the big dude in the middle, you're wearing a single-digit number.
I kind of think it's ironic whenever you have a big dude who weighs 340 wearing number 9 or wearing number 1 or something. I kind of dig that. 4 single-digit numbers on one defensive line, I don't like that.
That's just because you're a traditionalist. Any other thoughts? Any other observations or anything we heard today that is notable that we feel like we need to mention here?
We haven't mentioned Julian Sands.
Yeah, we're not gonna. We're not gonna. And here's why we're not gonna, because we're gonna talk to Julian Sand on Thursday, so we can spend that pod talking about Julian Sand. I don't know, man. They threw on air. Yeah, it's hard because the reason why is because the thing that Day wants to see from Julian Sand, he can't do right now and satisfy anybody's need to see it. We all want to see it, right? We all want to see him, be willing to make plays with his legs. We want to see just how much better he is, because he is the second year quarterback that Ryan Day has had. But the problem is, there's a lot of things we want to see from Julian Sand that Julian Sand can't do until he's allowed to be hit. So unless Day is going to do what he did last year, which probably not, because that would be chaotic to do when you don't have a battle going on. It's just kind of, let's see what he has to say, and we'll kind of go from there with the Julian Sand. We'll talk with Julian Sand and Kenyatta Jackson on Thursday after practice. Chris Henry Jr. looks pretty good.
Yeah, he's as tall as advertised.
He is as tall as advertised. Jeremiah Smith is still on the roster.
Yeah. I did, maybe I can ask Julian about it. I did want to ask Brian Day about the mobility with Julian. How do you want him to grow in terms of how he uses his legs? How do you do that in an offseason? Because he's not turning into Lamar Jackson overnight. So it's how does he become better with his legs when his athleticism can only reach a certain point, and then you're also not experiencing that in the spring? I'm interested to ask him that whenever we get to speak to him next.
Yeah, it's because it's the thing with the leg, and you're right. It's gonna be interesting to talk with Sam, because there's a ability and just a want to, right, and that's what it felt like with CJ Stroud, where it's you can do this and you're not doing it. Why aren't you doing it? And then the Georgia game happened, and now we've watched him with the Texans be harassed every single game and have to run around. With Kyle McCord, it was you're not doing this, but also you don't really have the capability of doing this. So what do you do with that? I think we are 14 games into Julian Sands' time as Ohio State's quarterback, and you've seen some evidence that would suggest if you're on the side of he doesn't have the ability to do it, you can point to those things. And if you are on the side of he's just not doing it, like he's choosing to not do it, you can point to these moments of like he can do, like the Penn State play. He can do that. So why aren't you doing it? And I think that's the question I almost want to pose, because like you're more of a like how do you work on that? I'm in a like, can you do it, and are you just not doing it?
But even then, even then, it's like how does he work? How does he work on that in the spring?
Yeah,
or not even in the spring, in preseason. Like, how do you work on that before September 5th?
Yeah, that's fair. Okay,
well, a lot of Julian.
But I will say, what did you say, Gillis?
This is a lot of Julian saying talk after saying we're not going to talk about Julian.
I've been trying to pivot
we
away.
40 minutes talking about 30 million variations of the offensive line that are not going to happen. All right,
good.
And what's your point? What's your problem?
I could argue Carson Hinsman moving to guard is more likely than Julian saying scrambling on a big play, but that's neither here nor there.
I mean, we've seen Julian scramble on a big play, though.
We've seen Carson Hinsman play guard. We've seen Carson Hinsman play guard more than we've seen Julian saying scramble on a big play. Not Julian things. I think one thing that all three of us noticed, Nate Roberts buying stock looked pretty good. And like we saved the hype up the tight ends portion for the end of the pod for, we can't lead with that because people are going to tune out if we lead with that. You got to be careful with how much you talk tight ends after last season. But I thought Nate Roberts in his route running looked good, right? I think we know, different things that tight ends can do. And some of that is like really hard to see even in the spring. Like how much were we going to see Mason Williams getting after it in the trenches in the spring? Probably not a ton. But I thought Nate Roberts running routes looked pretty good and was going up against some safeties and made some guys miss. I thought he looked pretty good.
I think he's going to be a very good tight end here. And it was good to see him flash that. Again, Allegro, I mean, he's covering a slot receiver and he won the rep. I thought that was pretty impressive. Legend Bay, he's a little bigger than maybe I was anticipating for a guy who spent his career playing quarterback out of smaller high school. And Devin Sanchez.
Lachlan got after Legend Bay
Carlos
today.
Lachlan had the running backs doing up downs. What
year is this, man? Beautiful. Like for like an inside baseball thing, the way these practices run, especially when it's on the indoor, like where the media stands is always where the running backs are doing their drills, and we see Lachlan just getting after it with these guys. It's the best. Legend Bay was not holding the ball where he should be holding the ball, and he let him hear it. Stanley Jackson, one of the I guess we don't use the term like scholarship, non-scholarship anymore, but like if this was 5 years ago, we would say he's a non-scholarship running back. Like he was going through drills at one point, and Lachlan just walked up and just punched the ball out from his head like with ease. That's what led to the up downs. Like Lachlan, media being next to running back drills is always the best because he's just it's no mercy. It's no mercy, and I love to see it.
You think that's nuts? Like you're like, oh, what year, brother? I was at a high school recruiting camp outside on the field. He's doing this with 15-year-olds who are not his players. He's making high school kids do the. He's like, nah, we're not doing this. Up now, and he would like blow the whistle, and I'm just like kind of like laughing at it because I think Elijah Newman Hall was here that weekend, the running back commit in 2028. So he was like leading the group, and he was like the number one kid in the group. Obviously, like that's how those things work. But I'm standing right there, and like everybody else is like. It's kind of instructive, and you're keeping eyes on kids, and they're high school, they're children, and you're trying to help them through the drills. And then Carlos Hawkins making those kids do up down, which I thought like you were like, oh, that's crazy, and I'm like, I've seen it even crazier.
I want to do a story on that on the
up downs.
No, I know what up downs are. I actually grew up at a time when it was normal to do up downs. Just like Carlos Laughlin's coaching style. Because it's so old school. Like seriously, are kids doing up downs in this day and age? Like Ohio State typically makes kids run a lap if they fumble the ball. Not the whole position group doing up downs, and you don't have time to do that. You only get a certain amount of hours with these kids.
It is the quote unquote kind of old fashioned way of coaching, but also like he's still able to recruit like an old fashioned way.
Yeah.
Right? Like how many running backs coaches in the country could get a Quinshon and a Travion together, or get Isaiah to stay when Bo Jackson's coming back, or whatever the case may be. So it is kind of this interesting overlap. I will say, like, we're talking about up downs. There are so many like exercises you can do. It feels like there's just like new ones made up all the time. To its core, there's still nothing worse than like burpees and up downs. Anytime your body has to go from like upright to on the ground to upright, whatever motions you're doing to get there, it's just miserable.
While chopping your feet.
Yeah.
Do you ever have that, like, I don't know if you guys played like high school football or whatever, but like you would have like my coach whenever we were in high school and the ball would hit the ground, fumble, whatever. Like if we were doing routes on air and the ball hit the ground, we would do up down. But like we would fumble and everybody would just go, ugh, and he would go, chug 'em, and he would just hear the whistle blow. I could wake up, I could hear chug 'em and a whistle blow, and I would wake up in a cold sweat at 3 a.m. and just my heart would be going 150 beats per minute because it draws back awfulness.
When I covered Mississippi State and they would like the humid Mississippi days in August when they would do like preseason camp and Leach would have them do up downs or something, I genuinely like hurt for the players. I was like, this, like, because you're also, when you're lifting yourself up off the ground in a humid day in Mississippi, you're like 20 pounds heavier because your jersey's just soaked and your pants are just soaked from the sweat. Like,
and you would dive on the ground at 7 a.m. and it would still be kind of like dewy from the night before. And you're like not that wet. You just dive face first, and now all of a sudden you're soaked. Just the worst.
That's my biggest takeaway from the day is Carlos Loughlin had his running backs doing up downs on the first day of spring practice because, of course, he did. Seriously, it's intriguing because Tony Alford used to be like this when he was here. That those camps in June, he would put these recruits through like hell because it was like he wanted to see if they could survive the workout. And I'm wondering, Carlos Loughlin is the same guy who's like, they're going to take on my mentality. They don't have no choice if you're going to be here. Like, there's a way he approaches this that it does bring the best out of his players. I mean, he had 2,000-yard running backs in 2024, and he had a true freshman running back of 1,000 yards, and a true freshman running back, like his best game of the season was against Michigan on the road in the snow. So it gets results, man. And he's probably about to land a 5-star day one, I'm going to be the best running back in this room type of recruit here in the next couple of months here. We'll see what happens with DDG, but it's like it produces results, but that balance you have to walk when that's your approach in this day and age where it's not easy to be the hard, what type of coach and not have it rub people the wrong way. So I just think it's interesting, but that's day one. One more practice before Ohio State heads on spring break. Do a rapid fire pod for tomorrow though. I think it'll be interesting just to see like, hey, we gave you some information. You got any questions coming off of that information as Ohio State spring practice is underway? 1 down, 14 more to go with the spring game closing things out on April 18th. 614-350-352 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. For Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis, I'm Steven Means. Talk to you guys later.
LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I filed my return, but I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.